Welcome back, everybody. So I wanted to make sure that we preserved the lore before the pages and books disappeared, especially for those who do not have a chance to complete all of the season, or for those who are new to the game after Season 3. So here is the reading of the lore. That evening he was thinking a lot of Asgard, and that it was time for him to leave the town and find the cause, even if it meant sacrificing his eye. What Loki would have to say if he could foresee what Odin would do to him for that mischief. Loki knew what she wished, how she craved to turn the living into the dead. Loki couldn't help taking advantage of this knowledge. When the construction of the citadel started, Hel personally instructed her helpers on what her adobe had to look like. The witches addressed Hel's envoys for advice, but they were too dumb to explain. Kirka did not want to disappoint Hel and decided to go down to Helheim to see the tower. Since then, people believe that the whirl of the old river is originally a spell which somehow hasn't worn off over time. The dripped blood blinded his eyes, and for a while neither could he see anything nor even feel pain. Yet death didn't come. The day had to be the last for others too, but it wasn't. Having figured out that they were unable to get to Valhalla, some of them were grieving, while others, like Tormund, were drinking to the gods' well-being. The Vikings decided that Hel took care of them. They went west hoping to find Hel and show their gratitude for the gift. The old man seemed insane. His speech was disoriented. All he had was a skinny horse and a funny wagon. He swore that a town was soon to appear somewhere there. He could no longer sense time. Or maybe he was talking about the future? The old man kept telling that the white night came right after the great feast. No one was trying to wrap their head around his words. King of the North gathered his bodyguards and set off to Hel's citadel. A pathfinder came to town, wishing to speak directly to the king. That night they had a long discussion about something. People were saying that the pathfinder saw draugrs, hordes of the dead, crossing Hopeless Gorge. Fear was taking over the town, and a few families left the land. He explained that the citizens had nothing to be scared of. "Immortal!" cried the old man. "Soon all of you will become immortal." And here is the reading of the books. So here's book 1. When pondering in solitude, Odin was talking to himself. That evening he was thinking a lot of Asgard, and that it was time for him to leave the town and find the cause, even if he meant sacrificing his eye. The Nords had yet to tell him everything, but they were hiding from him in the lands of the mortals. Loki, lurking at the door of the All-Father's hall, heard his monologue. Although having no clue what cause Odin was talking about, the trickster was beaming with felicity. He had already come up with a trick he would turn Odin's leaving into, was thinking how smart it would look like. What Loki would have to say if he could foresee what Odin would do to him for that mischief. The mischief worth of the old life to people and the gods. Loki nevertheless chose his victim. Loki chose Hel because he liked to amuse his loved ones. Loki knew what she wished, how she craved to turn the living into the dead. Loki couldn't help taking advantage of this knowledge. His trick was really smart. It ruined thousands of lives, but most importantly, it devoted him to destruction. For in that very moment the Norns crossed his name. When the construction of the citadel started, Hel personally instructed her helpers on what her adobe had to look like. She referred to Horfa, her favorite tower, rising above the dry fields of Helheim. That was a beautiful citadel, but unfortunately, none of the new servants of the goddess had been in her kingdom. Neither Kurga nor Inga or any other witches knew what the citadel had to look like. The witches addressed Hel's envoys for advice, but they were too dumb to explain. They didn't even understand what they were asked about. Kurga didn't want to disappoint Hel and decided to go down to Helheim to see the tower. She knew that the underworld was deep underground, but this knowledge alone was not enough. She cast the spell of icy whirl on the old river and, having made a whirl, jumped into it. Since then, people believe that the whirl of the old river is originally a spell, which somehow hasn't worn off over time. As for Kurga, she saw her mistress's favorite tower and managed to reconstruct its perfect replica on the surface. The only innovation she added was a lock. She asked giant smiths to forge a lock that could only be opened by the keys made of the god's weapon. When Hel saw her new abode, she was gloriously happy. However, shortly after, she decided that one citadel was not enough. She ordered Kurga to raise new citadels all the way to the horizon, where her domain ended. Tormund was the first whose head was cracked open. However, the fatal wound didn't kill him. The dripped blood blinded his eyes, and for a while neither could he see anything, nor even feel pain. Yet death didn't come. When the battle was over, the Vikings approached Tormund and washed his head. Imagine their surprise when they didn't find any wounds. That day had to be the last for others too. But it wasn't. The enemies were also alive, so continuing the battle was senseless. Having figured out that they were unable to get to Valhalla, some of them were grieving, while others, like Tormund, were drinking to the gods' well-being, by the grace of whom they had stayed safe. Every warrior had their own ideas of why they didn't die, yet none of them knew the real cause. Tormund thought Hel was the only one who could be responsible for that. Bringing a dead one back to life, not letting a living one die. The interference of the goddess of death was undeniable. When he shared those thoughts with his brothers, many supported him. The Vikings decided that Hel took care of them, that she was the only one who didn't abandon people. Thus, Tormund and several clans opposing his family united. They went west, hoping to find Hel and show their gratitude for the gift. Daredevils and fools who stayed in the north said that they'd met an old man who was waiting for the appearance of the town on the river. The old man seemed insane. His speech was disoriented. All he had was a skinny horse and a funny wagon. He wasn't in a hurry, just waiting as if the town was about to appear right in front of him. His route passed along the shore. He swore that a town was soon to appear somewhere there. Maybe his mind was confused by the white night, so he could no longer sense time. Or maybe he was talking about the future? No one was trying to wrap their heads around his words, yet many old-timers remember seeing him right where Newheim is built. The old man kept telling that the white night came right after the great feast. He assured that the mistress of the underworld had proposed a toast that made that day eternal. "Immortal!" cried the old man. "Soon all of you will be immortal! I swear a town will rise up here." Not only the madman, waiting for the town gate to open for him, knew about the construction of the town, meant to join people and the gods. The Norns did too. They could inform Hel about the danger, but preferred to keep it to themselves and refrain from playing momentous roles. Once Sigurd, the last king of the north, gathered his bodyguards and set off to Hel's citadel. Shortly before the siege, a pathfinder came to town wishing to speak directly to the king. That night, they had a long discussion about something. Although their conversation was away from prying ears, rumors started spreading around the influential clans. People were saying that the pathfinder saw draugrs, hordes of the dead crossing Hopeless Gorge and heading here, to the east. Among them, there were creatures of unbelievable size, greater than giants. People didn't know that those were Hell's envoys. Fear was taking over the town, and a few families left the land. They took their drakars and disappeared in the misty sea. Sigurd convened the council. He explained that the citizens had nothing to be scared of, and the rumors about the offensive was a lie aimed at wreaking havoc. And yet, Sigurd's bodyguards started preparing for the siege. The Pathfinder's keen eye noticed a familiar figure among the dead. The figure he used to frequently see by the king's side. The Pathfinder knew that the news that the meeting would break Sigurd's heart. But he couldn't keep it a secret. This saga. Odin, who hadn't lost his eye, finally allowed Hel to show everything she was capable of. All of her power. He promised to give her the lands covered by snow and illuminated by the sun if she impressed him. He ordered her to overthrow Tyr, Thor, Freya, and Njord, those arrogant fools who had disrespected him on more than one occasion. Hel has dreamt of it. She dreamt that one day Odin would do her justice, and she would own not the lifeless plains of Helheim, where even the weeds refuse to grow, but the earth, where life meets death every day. How many centuries has she spent fantasizing about it? And now those fantasies finally came true. Odin promises her that the people's earth that spans all the way to Jotunheim will, at last, become rightfully hers. Mortals will feel her wrath, and they will become her loyal servants after they die. From then on, Aesir gods were always looking over their shoulders. They could never know death and peace, but none of them wanted to perish in prisons made of stones from the depths of Helheim. None of them wanted to live in obscurity. But the gods vanished, and when they did, their favorites were left defenseless. They were drawn to the sanctums. However, none of the living could solve their mysteries. They would come and stay in these corridors forever. Hel would watch the chaos destroy the order that had existed for centuries. She laughed as avalanches were coming down from the mountains that separated peoples and giants' lands. Her laughter could be heard from the other shore of the old river. But one day, all went silent. Ringing silence spread throughout the north. The mistress remembered the smirk on Odin's lips. That smirk reminded her of someone she had forgotten, as if his image was erased with a careful and precise movement, a movement only the many-faced flatterer was capable of. The best of all liars, Loki. The two-faced goddess burst into tears, for the first time in ages she felt sorrow. She became a tool in the hands of someone stronger and wiser. After Hel realized that Loki had deceived her by turning into the All-Father and making her go up against everyone, she spent a long time plotting her revenge. She planned to lock him in the eternal ice that is furrowing the underground rivers. But Loki granted her a gift and made amends. Sly Loki presented the goddess with the best of his witches, the mistress of ice skulls, Kurga. She changed her name every 100 years, and each time she got more powerful. Hel hadn't forgotten anything, but she no longer held a grudge against Loki, especially after she became the sole owner of the northern lands. There was no more boring Thor, sanctimonious Tyr, virtuous Freya, and the always muttering Njord. Drained, they were all imprisoned in a place that would never see the sun. Hel's envoys were guarding them with their lives. At the feast held in the citadel, named after the dark goddess and dedicated to her, Hel made a toast and gave Loki a look of appreciation. She let him sip the 1,000-year-old wine out of her cup. Her envoys applauded, and their bones rattled throughout the citadel. Then Hel said that Kurga would be her eyes in Jotunheim. But first, she had to prove herself. All she had to do was get rid of her former master. Kurga paid heed. Laughing, she dragged Loki's body, drained of its godly power, up the stairs, leading to the very heart of Helheim. She froze his arms and legs with the eternal ice, and then told the envoys to smash his head if he dared to breathe. And for the first time in his life, Loki had to breathe in secret. Many believe that Valhalla fell on earth the day warriors didn't die in their fatal battles for the first time. Some even saw dense cloud formation fall behind the horizon. People thought it was just one of Hel's schemes, her sacred siege on Asgard, and those were the consequences. The northern lands were doomed. When the gods disappeared, everything they had created started crumbling as well. The great sanctums of the seer gods were abandoned by some and looted by others. The prophets started talking only on the 9th night, when Hel had raised the dead. They were saying that Hel cast her eyes on the deserted sanctums of the seer gods, and now the walls would be decorated with the most beautiful skulls and filled with the souls of those who would never get to Valhalla. At first, many were hiding their immortality. Warriors feared becoming outcasts, but in the end, it was the immortals who made it possible to live in those parts. It is hard to say how much time has passed, and in what time all this happened, but people got accustomed to immortality. It proved to be quite convenient. The immortals focused on living here and now. Life introduced new rules and new ways. The fall of Valhalla played right into Hel's hands. The dead gained the freedom she had dreamt of. However, regardless of the rumors people were spreading about her, the Dark Mistress had nothing to do with the Hall of Warriors falling down. In fact, the emergence of the immortals brought about considerable changes in her plans. Each day Hel would listen to many prophecies, but there was one that frightened her the most. It was foretold by Ingra, one of the oldest witches, and it said, "The All-Father in human form will cast you out of the depths of Helheim, from which you came into this world. The eternal day that allows no one to hide from your gaze will play a cruel joke on you, my lady. The light will blind you, and the gods will be saved by the one you consider an aphid on the spring grass. Asgard's call will deafen you, and Thor will mount his wolf and lead the army created by people. Trust me, Thor remembers every lash delivered by the envoys. He is laughing right now. He knows Loki will be the cause of everything yet again. I am looking into the cauldron, and I see a raven is flying towards the tower. Odin is coming for you. He is not in a hurry, but his every step proves my words. You know me, my lady. I would never lie. You were my mother, my sister, and my daughter. Why would I lie? You live in your citadel and listen to Freya crying. Every day you cut off her fingers. But all that is no more than mischief compared to what she will do to you and your daughters. Have you lost your gift of foresight? Believe me, all the witches here will face the fate even Loki himself would not be able to devise. May he be damned. You may laugh and think that I've lost my mind, and I have, but it does not prevent me from seeing all that exists. And so it begins. Odin has already stolen the drained body of Loki, who has chosen the wrong place and the wrong time for his trick. The great glacier has moved, and the blood of the powerless god has started flowing through the mortal's veins. They may be weak now, but if you don't intervene, we will go back to Helheim. It will truly be the best of Loki's tricks. When King Sigurd was asked what news his pathfinder had brought from the walls of Hel's citadel, the king had to tell the truth. The pathfinder saw Oraf, the king's son. He was held prisoner by Hel's servants. Then the Konung's warriors proposed a plan for rescuing him. The citizens knew Oraf's story. Many months ago, when Valhalla fell on the horizon and people gained immortality, he left his home with nothing but his axe, and no one had seen him since. The Konung kept silent during their expedition. He was pondering whether Hel could control human life, whether she could control immortality. What if she snapped her fingers and all of his warriors died? What if Oraf died? When the king and his bodyguards reached Hopeless Gorge, which was halfway to the Dark Citadel, the rumor about an army of Draugrs having formed here had already cleared. Sigurd ordered to set up camp. He didn't feel tired, but he couldn't think riding on a wolf. Hel was waiting for the sleep to sneak up on him. She came to Sigurd in a nightmare, bringing Oraf with her. "Oh, my king, I know how much you wanted to see your son." Hel's voice was grating and it hurt his ears. "I am giving you this opportunity. You feared that something had happened to him, but he is settling nicely in my abode. See?" Sigurd shuddered and looked at the horizon with the citadel's black pike towering over it. "You were wondering if I can control immortality. Now you can see that I can. In a way." Hel put her arm round Oraf as if he was her son. "You walked right into our trap, father," Oraf finally said, smiling. In troubled times, a wise king shouldn't risk himself, not even for his heir. Hel pulled Oraf down as a mother would. They vanished, and his parting words hovered in the air. "The fog is creeping over your people. Wake up." And the fog had indeed descended upon the camp. Hordes of the dead were coming from the citadel. There were so many Draugrs that they would sometimes get in each other's way and stop. However, Sigurd refused to believe that his son could betray him. He no longer wanted to believe in either gods or people. He was going to talk to his son face to face in the citadel that had become his abode. "Newheim will fall. Don't try to change the fate. The Norns lied, and their lies were woven from white threads. Standing in front of them, Odin was reading their lips. Hel fears your return." Odin felt weak. The Norns felt it too. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to lie. The All-Father had built a long road home ahead of him. Newheim, the town that was built by the mortals while he was living in seclusion, would be destroyed unless he returned to where he had sworn never to set foot. With the acquired wisdom but heavy thoughts, he walked for many days and nights. The path led through haunted gorge that Hel marked as the border of her kingdom. It was a difficult road, and when his feet were already covered in blood, he was not even halfway there. Many days had passed before he saw Newheim on the horizon. A formidable figure was standing at the gates. It was a warrior wearing heavy armor. When Odin finally approached him, he said that he had good reason to break his vow. They shook hands, and the warrior felt the wisdom the All-Father had gained in his travels. They walked to the square. There was a statue of him there, and Odin laughed upon seeing it. "Is that really what my nose looks like?" he asked his companion. The companion was taken aback, but when he saw a smile on the elder god's face, he smiled back. The warrior invited Odin to join him by the fire. He poured him some ale and left to call for others. When Odin had already drained his goblet, the warrior came back with 5 more guests. They were all hiding their faces under their hoods. They were all armed, and there was a sense of concealed uneasiness coming from each of them. They sat by the fire, and finally Odin got a good look at their faces. Heimdall, Odin's son, was sitting closest to him. Hod and Balder, a godly assassin and his victim, positioned themselves a bit farther, and a scald god was sitting next to them. He was holding a lute. Vidar, the god of vengeance, was waiting for Odin's speech. Even though his body no longer had any godly powers, it was seething with the thirst for revenge. Odin leaned closer to the fire and gestured everyone to draw nearer. Munin sat on his shoulder, and Heimdall smiled at the raven, and he asked where Hugin was, but received no reply. "The time has come to talk about our return," Odin said, and then addressed Bragi. "Play something!" And he started playing a melody that kept outsiders from eavesdropping on their conversation. So that is the lore so far that the devs have given us. There's a lot of things that we can guess from the lore. I would imagine that we're going to be seeing the Trakar soon, and perhaps going to this new land is going to help us save Newheim. I don't know. Tell me what you think in the comments. Thanks for listening. Bye.